Hey, John Hickok here, the Sun version, and today we're going to look at one of the most iconic firearms from one of the most iconic periods in American history, the West, and the 1873 Winchester, which I always thought it was kind of interesting that the West, a direction, is also a time period, but it is. And typically you think of the West as being post-Civil War, pre-1900s. What's that, 20th century, I guess? I think so. That's kind of the time period you think of being the West, especially the 1870s and the 1880s especially. And this gun coming out in, guess when? 1873, just like the model number, was one of the most iconic ones. It was used all through the iconic times of the West in the mid to late 1870s and all through the 1880s, and it wasn't until really when you get into the 90s maybe that there was some potentially better options, but even then you would have seen these things being used quite a bit. So we're going to look at that today, and let's start out with shooting this thing a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about why those guns are out there. Oh, sorry, again, I screwed up. Why those rifles, those aren't guns, those are only rifles. You're not allowed to call that a gun. Just kidding. Okay. All right, I'll shut up. Let's shoot something. Let's see. Let's just start with a few animals. Kind of get this thing zeroed in. I'll start on the bottom there with that pig. Got a nice little brass bead front sight. Okay, let's try the red plate over on the left. Okay, let's try the small red plate there in the middle on the left side with the little target swing. Let's try the one on the right. I knew that was going to be high. All right, I believe that was it. Look at that. It's weird how sometimes you can just instinctively feel when you're out of ammo, even on something that's not semi-automatic. I've always been comfortable behind a lever gun. You guys may have heard me say that before. Grew up shooting them. There's just something about them ergonomically, especially with the straight stock, cowboy, old style. I don't know, they just feel great to me. I love them. Okay, so 1873 Winchester. Now this is a new Winchester. This is one of the ones that they reintroduced in 2013, around there, and it's not, of course, made in New Haven, Connecticut. It's not a real Winchester, some people might say. It's made in Japan by Moroku. Now, a lot of people will trash, or some people will trash the fact that it's a Winchester. It's got the Winchester name on it, iconic American company, gun manufacturer, but it's made in Japan, right? Seems un-American. The thing is, like, with the Moroku guns, they seem to be pretty solid. Dad's had a 1886 Browning. You guys have seen it on the channel many times, and it's a Moroku. And we shot that thing a lot over the years. Dad's shot it, of course, more than I have, and it seems really solid. Any of these Moroku guns that I picked up, they seem to be pretty solid and pretty well made. It's obviously not Winchester, the old Winchester, but they seem to do a pretty good job. And when it comes to things that are manufactured in Japan, Japan doesn't have the same connotation that made in China does. Usually when something's made in Japan, you think it's probably it's quality more than likely, especially these days. I'm sure that's changed over the years, but when I see something made in Japan, I think it's probably pretty decent. But so this is not an original Winchester. This is a new one. Of course, like I said, we got it from Bud's Gun Shop, and it seems pretty decent. Like a decent. Well, I guess it's not a reproduction. It's kind of a reintroduction, reissue, something like that. But as far as fit and finish, it's not bad. The wood is a little bit. It's a little bit over, the receiver here and the steel and the tang and stuff. If you look around, over there, but it's even. So you can tell it was on purpose. It's not like a sloppy job or anything like that. And part of the reason that I've heard that they do that is because over time the wood can actually shrink a little bit. So it's kind of, they're kind of anticipating that. You can see the same thing up here. It's just a little bit of an edge there, but again, it's pretty even. So I consider it a pretty nice fit and finish. The color case hardening is not the best that I've ever seen, but it's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, looks like I don't know. Looks like those pictures you see in in old textbooks of space or something. It's just really neat. Color case hardening I've always thought it was really beautiful steel treatment. It's really neat. Now I've noticed down here on the lever, it's kind of acts like it's coming off, or it didn't take hold very well. But it's not bad. The real advantage of this thing, it's a Moroku, it's made in Japan, so it's a pretty decent level of quality, at least. Some people might argue that these are made better than the original 73s, and they might have a good reason to say that. But at least you're getting a pretty decent level of quality. But the beauty of this thing is you've got Winchester actually written on it versus a lot of these reproductions. That's kind of neat. So it's just like the originals. And you don't have the tang safety. That's one thing that's annoying about some of the newer Winchesters, like the 92s and the 94s. I think the 86s too. I can't remember exactly, but they they got a safety right there, which it kind of kills the kills that kind of Western feel about the rifle. And I actually talked to a guy, a Winchester rep, about that at I think SHOT Show or something, and he said that because someone, when they reintroduced the Model 92, someone had the idea to put it on there, and then once it's on there, they said that they can't really take it off for some reason. I don't know if it's because they're afraid of a potential lawsuit, or if there's some kind of legal reason that they can't. I don't know, but he explained to me that the reason that this one doesn't have it is because they reintroduced it so recently, they were able to elect to not put it on there. So that's why you get the original look and everything like that. I'm gonna load it up again. Not talk too much before I start blasting away. These so the original 73s, they actually made like almost 750,000 of those things from 73 up until 1919. So there was a lot of them out there in circulation, and a lot of people think of the Model 92, of course, John Browning's design, which is kind of a scaled down version of the 1886, as the iconic lever gun of the West. But I think a lot of that is because they were used in so many movies, and they were used improperly a lot in movies. You'll see a Western and they'll like stupidly say what time period it takes place. It'll be like 1876 or something like that, and then you'll see a bunch of people obviously with Model 92s, because you got the big locking blocks up there. They're very, very different looking lever guns, but this is what they would have had. For most of what we think of the Western era, they would have had these, and they would have had 1866s probably, a few Henrys, which I'll get into that in here in a second. All right, let's do some pot smoking. Feels like a good day for that. Got a bunch of pots out here. You know what? I'm just gonna get all 4 of these as fast as I can. I'm gonna start on the left. All right, well, that didn't go as well as it could have, but they're all down. Let's take out a 2-liter. Okay. Well, I got shooting a little too fast there, but that's how it goes. Pots were smoked. That's the important thing. Okay, so I was going to talk about with the 1866 and the Henry. As you can see here, so this is a Uberti 1873 Winchester clone. This is one Dad's had for a lot of years, long before we were doing the videos. It's got a little low wear on it, and Dad's homemade butt cover there for added length. And this is the newer Henry original 1860 Henry original, made by the newer version of the Henry Company. Obviously, this is not an original Henry. Those things are like $50,000 or something. So, as you can see here, the 1873 was almost exactly based off of or copied from Benjamin Henry's design. So you can see here, you just don't have the loading gate, of course. On the original Henry, you had this tubular fed magazine, which some people get confused and they think that the typical Henrys that are not based on the original that you see in the gun shop are just like the old Henrys, but you know, because you got the little thing, the plunger tube that you pull out, you know, and drop the rounds in. Well, this is a whole different ball game. You got this little tab here, and you pull it up, and you rotate over like that, and drop the rounds in. It's, you know, the original Henry was very different from how those newer Henrys are designed. So in 1866, they improved upon this design, the 66 Winchester, and you have a forearm, just like on the 73, and the loading gate, except it was still a brass receiver, and it was in the 44 rimfire, just like the Henry was. And then for 1873, that was the real breakthrough. Well, the loading gate was a pretty big breakthrough, but they came up to a little bit larger caliber and a center fire instead of rimfire in 4440. See, the 73 was also chambered in 3840 and 3220. But because they were going to chamber it in a little bit heavier cartridge, they wanted to go with a steel receiver, and that's why you get the look of the 73. It's very, very similar to how the original Henry looks, and especially the 1866. But the 4440 is still not, it's not a powerhouse. It's not a 454 Casole or anything like that. And here's a couple of, this is a 4440 right here. Some comparison. Pretty similar. Load her up again. Throwing bullets everywhere. Let's see. Something else I was going to tell you about this thing. I can remember. Well, a little bit of history on Moroku. So, some people think that Moroku maybe is a new thing, because everyone knows that Winchester was made in New Haven, Connecticut, made in America. Of course, up until the I think pre-64, I believe, 1964, somewhere around there is when they stopped doing that. But Moroku has been around since the late 1890s, actually. He was, I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name. It starts with a K, so I don't want to butcher it. But Moroku was a farmer, and he made basically like farming equipment. He was a blacksmith, and I guess he wasn't a farmer. He was a blacksmith making farming equipment. It's a little different. And he decided to make some guns so that he could hunt hogs there in Japan, and that was how he got into firearms. And then they kind of went out of business for a while or something like that, and then they got started up again around the 1950s, around in there, and they started making basically like copies of Browning's over and unders, and at some point they got involved with Winchester, and are making these Winchester reproductions, reintroductions, you know, whatever you want to call them. But I don't know, they seem like pretty high quality, I think. Other than maybe the color case hardening not being quite as good as it could be. One thing that's kind of cool about these Winchesters versus the Uberti is that you get a walnut stock, which has more of the, you know, of course, the traditional look, whereas on these Italian reproductions, the wood kind of has a reddish tint to it. You'll even notice in some of the some Western, especially like the more modern ones, you'll notice that they'll have, like, you can tell it's a Uberti or an Italian copy because the wood is a little bit reddish instead of the, you know, the walnut, which is not a big deal, but if you're like a big gun guy, you spot those kind of things sometimes. But, okay. Take out a few more of these 2-liters. Let's go back over on the hill, try the red plate again on the left. A little low. All right, let's try the little one again. All right, one thing I found, I really like the front sight for the precision stuff because you can really get a nice fine bead with this thing. But as far as the close-up stuff, sometimes I lose the front sight and I gotta find it. That was kind of what was screwing me up with some of those pots earlier when I was doing all that bad shooting. Okay, I'll take it. Let's see, let's get these pots, these little pots. All right, out of bullets, cartridges, sorry. So yeah, the 73 is it's a beautiful rifle, and it's cool that, you know, even though they're made in Japan, it's still neat that you can get one today that has Winchester on it, and it looks pretty close to how the originals did, because, you know, being chambered in 45 long Colt, of course, is really nice because you can find the ammo almost anywhere. And that's the advantage of these newer ones. That, you know, if you wanted to buy an original 1873, it's neat, you know, to own a piece of history like that. But there's a lot of disadvantages, of course, because one, they're really expensive. A lot of them are fragile. You have to shoot black powder in a lot of them, depending on how old they are. They're going to be chambered in something weird that's hard to find. Like, well, 4440 is, you can find it. Like, this is newly manufactured stuff. But, you know, it's still weird compared to 45 long Colt. You can't find it at Walmart or anything like that. You know, or it may be in some of those other calibers like 38-40 or 32-20, which are even harder to find. You know, and of course very expensive. You know, so it's neat that Winchester is doing this, even though they're made in Japan. Gives you kind of an alternative option versus the Uberti clones. And these things aren't cheap either. They're like 13 or 1400 bucks, which is a little more expensive than like the Ubertis. Maybe a few $100. But again, having that Winchester name on there, even though it's not as real as it once was, it's still pretty cool. You know, and if you're a big Western fan like I am, then you can kind of appreciate, you know, the cool factor of these things. I guess I'll load it up, shoot one more time. Might as well while we're here, right? Got plenty of federal ammo here. Okay. Nose is trying to run on me. I get pollen allergies really bad this time of year. The trees, they don't like me. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Winchester 73, but talked about this before. But something I picked up from that movie was Jimmy Stewart. Of course, he wins a Winchester 73 rifle in that movie. But at one point when he's loading it, he does something I never thought of before. You stick the round in to about right there. Well, of course it pops out. He was like sticking it in well, this grass is too clean. He was sticking it in basically like, yeah, something like that. And then he would take the next round and just push it on in. Kind of keep yourself from pinching yourself, I guess. I thought it was kind of interesting. I do it sometimes. This one's not too bad about pinching you though. Relatively smooth. Okay, let's try to knock down some animals. Look at that. I love those new buffalo targets. Okay, let's get that pig over there on the left. Try the turkey. I knew that was going to be a miss. That ram does not want to fall. Oh, couldn't get the ram down. It took some hits though. All right, so there you go. Hopefully that gives you some idea about these things. Again, kind of my general opinion of them is I think the Japanese Moroku Winchesters, I think Moroku does a pretty good job of making these old guns, and a good enough job that, you know, it's cool having that Winchester name on there. So, you know, I would definitely think it's a cool alternative basically to the Ubertis, even though they're a little bit more expensive. Again, as far as negatives, you know, the color case hardening isn't perfect. on it. You know, this may bother you, the wood, you know, coming over the receiver like that a little bit, whereas like on the Uberti, it's, you know, basically even. But again, part of the reasoning for that is that, you know, theory is that, of course, that well, it's not a theory. I mean, wood does shrink over time. I don't know how long it takes necessarily. It might take 30 years for it to be even, or 50 years. I don't know. But that's kind of the thinking on that. But that could be a negative for you. The action seems okay. I mean, we don't have a brand new original made back in the day to compare it to, but basically I can tell from the shooting that I've done with it since we've had it, it seems like a pretty solid representation of the real thing. So there you go, the Winchester 73, the gun that won the West, as they say. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Hey, how you guys doing? Just here practicing a little guitar. As you can tell, I need to get better. Just on the range hanging out. But I wanted to let you guys know while I'm here, since you guys just stumbled in on my practice session, about our friends over at SDI. You can check them out at sdi.edu. That's the Sonoran Desert Institute. They're a fully accredited online distance learning program where you can be certified in gunsmithing, or you can get an associate's degree in firearms technology. That's sdi.edu. Also, don't forget about our friends over at vaulteksafe.com. You've seen their safes, the Vaultek, on our shooting table. So don't forget to check them out if you get a chance. And also all of our other social media entities. We are on Patreon now, so you can find us on Patreon. There'll be links in the description. Just Hickok45 on Patreon. We are on Facebook, of course, Hickok45 on Facebook. You can also find Hickok45 on Instagram, the real Hickok45 at Instagram, Hickok45 on Twitter, full30.com, and then I have some social media stuff, John_Hickok45 on Instagram, John Hickok on Facebook, and there's also a Hickok45 and Son Facebook, and the Hickok45 and Son YouTube channel, of course. And I guess that's all I can think of for now. I believe that's all of our different social media things. So I guess I'll get back to my practice. As you can tell, I need to get a lot better, but I think I'm improving just a little bit. I don't know, we'll see.